the world's best brands, such as Virgin and Coca-Cola, are worth billions of dollars. But how do you develop, and more importantly, how do you protect your brand from copycats? To answer these questions, I spoke with specialist IP lawyer Trevor Choy. So just tell us a little bit about what you do.
I'm a trademarks lawyer, and our practice is specifically on protecting brands and intellectual property.
So what sort of brands would you work with?
We work on a range of consumer brands, especially food and grocery items, but we also go into services and other manufactured items.
Trevor, there's been a lot of talk about branding and positioning and all that this day and age, but tell us why it is so important.
Brands are absolutely vital because they're the difference between the business success and failure. If I use this example of a mobile phone, let's say you're in the market to buy a mobile phone, and this one has all the bells and whistles that you're looking for. It's made by Sharp, and it's worth $600. Now imagine I said to you that there's an identical mobile phone that's worth $500, but it's not made by Sharp, it doesn't have the Sharp brand on it. Which phone would you buy, the Sharp or the other one?
Well, I'd probably buy the Sharp.
Okay, and what if I said to you that I could sell you the cheaper phone for $400, so that's a $200 saving, same phone?
Yeah, I'd probably still buy the Sharp.
Okay, and if I reduce that even further to $150, which would you take?
Okay, at that price I'd probably take the cheaper model.
So it's only really at a difference of $450 that you start to look at the cheaper one. And that $450 is the value of the Sharp brand.
So I suppose the next thing people would want to know is how can they develop a brand for their product or business?
What they need to think about is what their product or service means to their consumer. And that's really the essence of the brand. That then gets communicated to the consumer. You tell the consumer about your brand through your logo, your name and slogan and everything else.
And once they're established, they've worked out their brand, what can they then do to stop other companies from copying them?
They need to register a trademark to protect their brands against copying. Without a trademark, without a registered trademark, their brands are vulnerable to copying. It's very easy to copy.
So Trevor, tell us about the steps that people need to take in order to properly protect their brands.
The first thing when they're actually developing the brand is they need to consider whether they can protect it in the first place, because you can't register everything. There are only certain types of names and logos and slogans that you can register. After you've registered the name and the logo, what needs to be done is a trademark search to check that it's not already registered. If it's not registered, then they need to lodge a trademark application.
And Trevor, what sort of costs are involved in getting a trademark?
It depends on the type of trademark that's being registered, but generally legal fees start from about $2,000 and they go upwards depending on the level of coverage and what exactly needs to be registered and how difficult it is to register.
So Trevor, there's a lot of companies out there who, because of the cost involved, don't properly protect themselves. So what's going to happen to them if they do get copied?
The problem with having a brand that's not registered is that your lawyers have no weapons with which to defend you. They can't stop the copying very easily, and what will happen is you'll end up in litigation potentially, which ends up costing a lot more. You might end up with a fight that might cost you $50,000 or $100,000 without a very good chance of success.
So following on from that, a business has protected themselves properly and someone does copy them, what steps do they take in order to stop them?
If the brand's being properly protected, what we often find is that just by letting the copycat know that the protection is in place, everything's been registered properly, the copycat assesses their position, goes and gets advice from their lawyer, and their lawyer tells them to stop copying. So you can often finish a dispute very, very quickly without having to go through any of the expensive legal costs.
So Trevor, can people go to any lawyer to get this sort of advice, or do they need to go to a specialist?
This sort of work is handled by specialist lawyers because it's an area that requires a fair bit of training and experience, and trademarks are not a compulsory subject at university and at law degrees, for law degrees. So the people who work in this area generally are people who have a fair bit of experience and they've done trademark applications repeatedly, so they know what's happening.
So let's say the business has done the right thing, they've built a good brand, it's properly protected. How much value can that really add to the business?
Well, if I use the example that I gave before about the mobile phone, and the fact that you're willing to pay $450 more for this mobile phone because it's got a good brand, What that means, it's an extra $450 more profit for that company selling an identical phone. With $450 more profit, obviously the company is worth a lot more for a buyer who wants to look at buying that company up. And that's where the value sits. Because you can make more money from this company with a good brand, people are prepared to pay a lot more for it.
Okay, Trevor, thanks for joining us on Wealth Creator.
My pleasure.